rock and roll, I want you to pay attention to the cultural influences that rock has had on American society and around the world. I also want you to look at how culture has influenced rock itself. It has changed greatly over the years to reflect the society that it's coming from.
Rock and roll is an American style. It's one of the few styles that did start here in the US. And it's a blend of African American and white musical styles. So it's a blend of blues, jazz, gospel, R&B. It's a little bit of everything, and it takes from everywhere. Later on, we even get the Beatles, who use sitar, which originates in India. So it's a little bit of everything. This style, when it was originally formed, challenged segregation. So when rock and roll was starting to come about, blues and jazz and gospel and R&B, they were already challenging segregation, but rock and roll more so. Rock and roll was a little more mainstream, but it was a mix of everybody's style. So it was bringing to the mainstream people of all different walks of life. So it challenges the idea of segregation. This music wasn't segregated, but the lives of Americans at the time was. Now it can be divided into two categories. On one hand, we get very traditional rock and roll. This is original rock. This is like Elvis and that kind of stuff, the early stuff. And then 1950 happens, and now we get everything else. So everything after 1950 is just everything else. Instruments that are common to the style: electric guitar, electric bass, drum kit, vocals, keyboard. Once again, you can use a lot of different stuff, but these are the base, the root of the style. Now, when did it begin? Now, we can see elements of rock and roll present as early as 1920. Those elements include backbeat, wild vocals, shouting, stomping. We can see little pieces of this. In 1928, we get Boogie Woogie with Clarence Pinetop Smith, and we see this piano bass line pattern. This bass line pattern comes from 12-bar blues. So we've talked about this 12-bar blues progression since the first day of the semester. And so this Boogie Woogie style is really infused with this 12-bar style. And it later fuses with other styles, blues, jazz, R&B, and becomes rock and roll. Late 1940s, we get Fats Domino, Joe Turner, and others that are starting to create this early rock that had a really strong beat and a faster tempo. Alan Freed and the Moondog Coronation Ball, 1952. This is where we first see the term rock and roll. And so over here, this is a flyer from his coronation ball, and he is the one who called it rock and roll. So he was a radio show host. Up until this point, it was race music. But this race music was presented to a multicultural audience. And this is where we really get that segregational challenge, is music that was considered up until this point as being African American only is now presented to a wider audience. It's for everybody. So we really need to talk about cover songs. Rock and roll music is rampant with cover songs. Other styles are too, but rock and roll was really bad about it. So a cover song is a song that's originally performed and or written by another artist that a different artist comes and uses this song as their own. Elvis is really bad about this, and Elvis is really bad about not taking credit for it too. Hound Dog was not written by Elvis. Go look it up. Go find out. He didn't write it. This was a response to race music, blues, gospel, soul. So what they would do is they would take a song that was written and performed by an African American artist, and then they would take somebody who was white and make them sing it, aka Hound Dog. So they would take these songs that they had no business redoing, and they would redo it. But the reason for this is they wanted to bring it to a wider audience. They didn't think that, quote, race music would be popular. They didn't think it would make it, so they would put a white face on it to make it go mainstream. Now, songs were sanitized, so they would take out slurs, any mention of African Americans, or anything that was considered offensive. Absolutely anything. So they took away the original meaning of the song. They sanitized it. They took everything away. Now we also get rockabilly. So rockabilly was rhythm and blues performed by white artists. So something gets like this combo of country. Well, it can be. It's got some country in there, but it is not country rock. It is its own section. So it's a combo of R&B, gospel, and country, and it led up to rock and roll. So this was pre-rock and roll, and it was characteristic of the hiccuping, gulping, and stuttering vocals. So Elvis Presley was really well known for this style. He was the face of the style. And so Bill Haley in his comments, Rock Around the Clock was the first of this style to top the Billboard charts. So when Elvis was writing music and performing music, he was influenced by African American blues. When he was living in Tennessee, which is a very much a country music town, it was also a blues town. He was getting these mixing of styles, and he was influenced by these different styles. Your code word for this video is bandstand. So your code word is bandstand. So American Bandstand was a popular TV show that would play music and would showcase artists from this time period of different rock and roll artists. Your keyword is bandstand.
A Triton is great balls of fire. You take my nerves and you have